Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars, and it's time for a Luthier's Quick Tip.
If you'd like to help support this channel, visit eguitarplans.com and buy a plan. Now on with the video.
Hey guys, this week's quick tip for luthiers: stop paying retail prices. If you are in business building or repairing guitars, you should be paying wholesale or dealer pricing for all of the components that you're going to use to make and repair guitars. And you can also save quite a bit on tools as well if you do that. Now, to get that pricing, what you have to do is, first of all, you need to set up your business as a legitimate business. And I talk more about that in this episode, so go back and watch that and you'll understand what I'm talking about. But once you have established yourself as a legitimate business, you can then apply at various manufacturers and retailers for wholesale and dealer pricing. And that will allow you to save quite a bit of money on all the parts and materials that you purchase. In fact, if you shop local lumber yards for the wood that you use, check with them about contractor pricing and see if you can get a break there. I shop at several local lumber suppliers in the Denver metro area, and I have contractor pricing set up at all those different companies. So I can go in, choose the wood that I want to use, and I'll get a price advantage, a nice deal on those pricing. And that can be really, let's face it, when you're purchasing wood for guitars, it can get really expensive when you start talking about some of the exotic woods. So being able to knock some of that price back can really help save some money. Now, the biggest advantage to doing this is, as I said in the last episode, I talked about how I separate my pricing into two different numbers. And one of those numbers, the first number, is the deposit price, which is your parts, materials, and shipping. So if you can really bring down that cost of your parts and materials, that's going to attract more business. Because instead of charging somebody like, say, $600 for the deposit price, by using and taking advantage of wholesale and dealer pricing, you might be able to knock that down to like $300 or $400, and that's going to attract the buyers. Also, if you're pricing your guitars at a specific amount, say, $1,500, if you're charging, like $500 of that money is going towards parts, then you're making a profit of $1,000 on that guitar. However, if you can really cut that price down and that expense down, you can then realize higher profits. So if you sell a guitar for $1,500, but it only costs you $300 in parts and materials, then you've just added another $200 to your profit. So that's another good reason why you should consider making your business a legitimate business. You can take advantage of wholesale and dealer pricing. If you're not a legitimate business, they're not going to let you take advantage of that pricing. You can apply, but it's probably not going to happen. So that's this week's quick tip. Now, there is one other thing I wanted to mention, and this came up after I posted last week's episode where I talked about how I come up with my pricing using my two-number system, the deposit price as well as my labor cost. Several people ask, what about items that are consumable items, such as finish, the stains, the paints, the clear coats, the grain fillers, all that stuff. Saw blades, sandpaper, all that stuff that gets used up in the process. I had debated on whether or not to include what I call a shop fee, which would account for everything that is kind of in that gray area and that's hard to describe. All your consumables, your electricity, the coffee you drink in your shop, all that kind of stuff. However, if you put that into a price and present that to a customer, they're going to balk. They're going to want to know, what am I paying for there? So then you would have to break it out, and that's where it could get really, really confusing. Well, if you want to do it that way, what you can do is calculate it as a percentage of the overall price, and then explain to the customer that's the cost of running my shop as I'm building your guitar. Another way to do it that's a little bit less obvious is to calculate that percentage, but then roll that into your hourly rate. That way you really don't have to explain it. You're covering yourself as far as the cost of your electricity and your consumable supplies and all that. But you don't have to go to the effort to try to explain that, which could get very time consuming and isn't always going to be accurate. I do think that trying to calculate a percentage would be much easier. You would just always add that as part of your hourly rate. So I hope that clears things up. It probably doesn't, but that's the thing about pricing and running businesses. You can explain it as a simple concept, but then when you start to drill down, it gets really complicated. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any comments or questions, post them down below. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next week.